As long as everybody behaves, this will be quick and painless.
Toy Fair grabs the headlines, more news about C5 leaks out, and Dark Horse giveth and Dark Horse taketh away. It's February 20th, and you'll hear about those stories and more this week in Star Wars. This Week in Star Wars is your source for new and noteworthy developments from the galaxy far, far away. I'm your host, Matt Fox. And now, this week's headlines. Toy Fair International 2010 ran its course over the past week in New York City. The annual trade show is an opportunity for toy manufacturers to show potential retailers the products they intend to make available over the coming year. As always, Star Wars licensees had plenty to show this year, led, no doubt, by Hasbro, the largest Star Wars retailer in terms of product and profitability across toy lines. As a result of earlier toy shows and leaks, Hasbro had very few surprises at Toy Fair this year, but had plenty of new product to display nonetheless, led no doubt by the large-scale, totally redesigned AT-AT. Half playset, half vehicle, the AT-AT will retail for $100. We were also shown samples of some of the new figures that will be coming out, including the interesting and possibly exciting Vintage line, which recreates the card backs from the late 70s and early 80s. New Clone Wars figures were also shown, as well as other new vehicles and role-playing toys and whatnot. Other exhibitors showed off Star Wars wares ranging from chopsticks to iPod covers and USB hubs, to fancy lightsaber pens, to plushies, and with backpacks and sleeping bags for everybody. There's really so much to talk about Toy Fair that I'm planning on doing a special show later in the week simply to discuss the items that were put on display, so keep an eye out for that in the podcast feed. And if you haven't seen them already, of course, photographs are available of almost every Star Wars-related item that was shown at Toy Fair, and these are available on almost all the popular collecting sites and Rebel Scum. In other news this week, Lucasfilm announced a list of companies that will be attending Star Wars Celebration 5 as exhibitors. Not many surprises on the list, and in fact it would be more surprising if these companies wouldn't be attending C5, as they're some of the larger Star Wars licensees, including Hasbro, Lego, Acme Archives, FX Collectibles, Hallmark, Topps, and Gentle Giant, Random House Publishing, etc. The full list is available on StarWars.com along with the press release, and I'm sure we will see further lists of other attendees as the convention grows closer. Star Wars Celebration 5 will be held from August 12th to 15th, 2010 at the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida. The Clone Wars animated show concluded its Mandalorian-themed subplot with the Duchess of Mandalore episode on February 12th. As with most other shows during the Olympics, The Clone Wars is now taking a brief hiatus and will return with new episodes on March 5th with an episode entitled Senate Murders. Old-school Star Wars fans will be interested to know that the original Star Wars parody, and some still consider it to be the best, Hardware Wars, is now available for the first time on DVD. With the expected bonus features, the DVD experience will no doubt be superior than huddling around an 8mm film projection in the public library, which, from my experience, is how most people had to see Hardware Wars back in the 70s. The DVD is available now from Amazon.com and other online DVD retailers. Now a little more non-Toy Fair related collecting news. Galactic Hunter reports that the Easter mini Lego sets from the Star Wars line are now available at Targets across the country. There are 5 sets: the X-Wing, the Republic Attack Shuttle, Grievous's Starfighter, the Torrent Starfighter, and the TIE Fighter. Retail for $349 and are available in the special Easter promo section usually near the front of each Target store. LEGO also leads off our video game news this week with the announcement of LEGO Star Wars 3, a video game based on the Clone Wars TV show. Produced by TT Games, the company responsible for the previous LEGO Star Wars entries, LEGO Star Wars 3 will follow the plots of Season 1 and 2 of the Clone Wars animated show. The game is expected this fall and will be available for almost all platforms: Wii, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, PSP, Nintendo DS, and the PC. Also confirmed this week was the earlier rumor you heard here on This Week in Star Wars that the hitherto and once promised exclusive Hoth level from the Force Unleashed Ultimate Sith Edition will be available to all owners of the Force Unleashed on February 23rd as a download on Xbox Live as well as the PlayStation 3 network.
It just isn't fair.
No, but it's hardly surprising. Publishing news this week. Dark Horse Comics has made available the final episode of the Knights of the Old Republic series. Issue 50 was published on February 17th and wraps up the exploits of Zane Carrick, Griff, and his associated friends. As a bit of solace for Knights of the Old Republic fans, Dark Horse also announced, however, that John Jackson Miller, the writer of Knights of the Old Republic, will begin work on a new Star Wars title, Knight Errant, which takes place slightly before the age of Darth Bane, or roughly 1,000 years before Episode 1. Knight Errant will appear, according to the Dark Horse press release, sometime in the fall of 2010. In the meantime, Star Wars comic fans should keep an eye out for Episode 45 of Star Wars Legacy, which will be hitting comic book stores on February 24th. And our last bit of news this week, Harrison Ford, in an article available on musicrooms.net, alleges that he made bad films in order to get more money for his role in Star Wars. More specifically, Ford alleges that while the three main stars of the original Star Wars film were paid so little, he was the only one that was not signed to a sequel deal. Therefore, he went out and made films such as Hanover Street and the totally awesome Force 10 from Navarone in order to get his salary rate up, in order to demand more money for The Empire Strikes Back, for himself as well as for Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. No word on whether he would use the same tactic of taking on additional roles in order to increase his salary for the allegedly upcoming Indiana Jones 5.
I already work around the clock!
That's it for news this week. Hey, we're up on iTunes. As a sure sign that we're a real podcast now, and possibly a sign of the apocalypse, as you can now download past episodes and all the future episodes through the internet's premier podcast finding thing. As a result, there's no excuse now not for you to pass the word about This Week in Star Wars. If you find it useful or unintentionally hilarious, tell all your friends about it and maybe we can grow the community a bit. At the same time, we're going to be having our first special edition of This Week in Star Wars in a couple days where me and another TWIS staff member, yes, there are more than one of us, will be discussing the stuff that came out at Toy Fair this week. Now, I know you've heard it discussed to death on forums and other podcasts, and you've looked at the pictures and formed your own opinions. And if that's the case, don't download it. But maybe there'll be some insight, maybe there'll be some interesting comments, but whatever, check it out. And that was This Week in Star Wars. Join us again next week for more news, notes, and developments from the galaxy far, far away. Visit www.thisweekinstarwars, or, for our lazier listeners, www.twisw.com. where you can find links, more details about the stories mentioned, and contact information for the show, as well as the internet's finest support group for sufferers of restless leg syndrome. This week in Star Wars, we prowl the web so you don't have to.
This Week in Star Wars is not affiliated with Lucasfilm, its subsidiaries, or any other entity mentioned in this podcast. Star Wars, its characters, and creations are the property of Lucasfilm. All other trademarks are property of their respective trademark owners. This Week in Star Wars is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast is copyright 2010 This Week in Star Wars. Invaluable technical assistance provided by WebStorm Interactive. News, comments, and questions can be directed to host at thisweekinstarwars.com. More information, links to stories presented, past episodes, and additional contact information are available at www.thisweekinstarwars.com.